Okay, so we're recording this in the middle of February, and people listening to it are going to be in the period of the year where we're about 6 to 8 weeks in. The honeymoon phase of January and New Year's resolutions are all coming to an end, no matter whether that's a business goal, a health goal, a relationship goal. So the big question is, how do you first kick up the flywheel, but then how do you sustain the flywheel? How does that journey begin? And maybe we start it from January, and then we walk people through the journey of it all, and let people apply it to their lives in the best way that they can.
Yeah, so sort of just bouncing on it, I suppose, is January gym club's over now, isn't it? I don't know what your gym's like. My gym's significantly quieter this. Yeah, it's already quieter this week than it was 4 weeks ago. And we've lost that sort of optimistic initial drive that everyone gets. They've been out and bought the new trainers, they've bought the new hoodies, they've got these big grand plans of what 2022 is going to be. And then before they're a fortnight in, they're already back to bad habits and, well into it's further back than where they started. So I think what we're going to talk about today is applicable to business, it's applicable to fitness. And one of the models we use, and I think it's one of the best ways to explain it, and I've only learned it the hard way, is talking about the actual flywheel. Should we start off there?
Over it.
So for those people that don't know what a flywheel is, if you've read Good to Great, they talk about a really good example. A flywheel is part of an engine that maintains inertia and momentum. And also back in the day, if you imagine big industrial man-made industry factories, there was like a big concrete wheel, which you'd physically put wooden poles in, and then maybe 15, 20, 30 big men and women would push it around. And that first bit to get it going was also almost impossible. And then it would start to slowly move. And then eventually they'd go from the heel of the foot to the toe of the foot. They'd get a millimeter, then an inch, and it would slowly start to go. And then eventually they take their first half a step, then their first step. And actually now they're all walking around in a circle, pushing this wheel. Then it starts into a walk, then a faster walk, then a jog, then a sprint. And this flywheel, this big concrete hula hoop, starts to get rapid speed up. And then eventually they had to grab the wood and literally jump it and get out of the way before this thing wipes them out, because it's got its own an energy and an inertia, and it's moving of its own accord. And it's exactly the same with momentum and flywheel. Is we talk about the 3 steps, and the first step, what I'll do is I'll give you the 3 steps, and then Akash and I can sort of just bounce them around. So the 3 steps is, the first step is mindset. And so the first is mindset, the second is motivation, and the third is momentum. So when we talk about mindset, this is the January gym club, where you've got to go in there and you've got to be happy that for the first 4 weeks, you've got to go in with the mindset that this is going to be the hardest workout you've ever done. So the first 5 will physically break you, the hardest workout you've ever done. And it's not even like you're going to get a positive return. You'll probably get a negative return, because you're going to feel like death. You can look in the mirror and your body that perhaps you weren't happy with initially is now sweaty and inflamed and red and rosy, and it looks even worse than when you started. And you've got to have the mindset. You've got to go through these hard miles with loads of effort and no return. So that's the first phase, where you put in loads of effort and you get nothing back. Think about putting that spanner on a nut and pushing it really, really hard, load of energy, and it doesn't even move. You've got to do that. Same with the concrete flywheel. Eventually it starts to move. And then the second step is motivation, because for the first time, getting up at 6 a.m. and doing 10,000 or 7,000 steps or 8,000 steps, which is painful, for the first time you go out and you're like, do you know what? I actually feel better for this. I'm starting to feel hydrated. I'm sleeping better. I'm less irritable. I feel my energy's like better. And you start to get motivated because you get these early signs of success and you start to enjoy it. And actually then things start to move. You become motivated. You start to see results. Your journal starts to go up. Your energy levels start to increase. Your general well-being gets better. And then eventually, so the first 5 break you, that's the mindset. The second 5 make you, and that's the motivation. Once you've got that motivation, then you switch gears into momentum, and then you're running, and you're unstoppable until you take your eye off the ball, which happens to everyone. You've got that momentum. You're firing on all cylinders, and then for some of us, myself and Akash specifically, is we go from gear 3 to gear 4, and we go from momentum into the masochist, and we just end up causing ourselves an injury from burnout or overcooking it or staying lean for too long and all these sort of stupid things that we do as high performers.
That's the fun of it, though. Gear 4.
It's mad. It's yeah.
With gear 1, when the focus is on mindset, I think it's important to say that for fitness, whilst it might, you will get those initial sort of results, but what it'll feel like is you feel like you've got like 100, you're on like 1 out of 100. Like you might have lost like a kilo, but you've got 25, 30 to go. And it's that feeling of like, oh, I've done 3-4 weeks of this. Should I not be way further ahead than I should be? And I think that's what demotivates a lot of people, is there's not enough of a dent into that target that they want to set themselves.
I think you and I talk a lot about managing expectations as well. It's when you and I work together in different capacities, when we're talking about, say, marketing campaigns. In the marketing campaign, everyone launches on launch day and expect people to be queuing up, banging down the door. When you understand the reality in practice, and this is the thing about high performance, it's not necessarily being superhuman, it's understanding that you're not superhuman. And actually, you've got to go through the hard miles that nobody else wants to do to actually get to the gold. And it's the same with marketing campaigns. It's the same with working out. It's managing people's expectations that slow and steady wins the race. And there's very few quick wins, unless obviously in training you can use like artificial things like you can in business, things that are just not sustainable. But if you want to do it properly, slow and steady wins the race. And you just have to have that phase 1 is mindset of, I'm going to tell you that for the first 4 weeks, you're not going to be lifting, you're not going to be benching 80 kilos or kg. You're not going to be cutting 2 kg a week. In a marketing campaign, the first 4 weeks is going to be the hardest 4 weeks of the campaign, and you're going to sell nothing. But if you go in with that mindset and you understand that that's what's to be expected, then as long as that's all you achieve, or that's what you'll achieve, as long as that's all you expect, it's okay. I think it's the mismanagement of expectations where everyone, wants to lose 8 stone in a day. It just doesn't happen.
Then how do you, when you get you do get those early wins, you're now in motivation stage, you've had a couple of results, things are starting to move forward, you're excited. Now there's obviously a danger of taking your eye off the ball and sort of reverting back in March and being like, the next thing you know, it's the end of the March and you're back to square one. I think this is where people fall off the most, is motivation to momentum. How do we bridge the gap so more people can go from motivation to momentum? Because I think when you start something, that mindset and you've got the expectation laid out, I think that's the easy bit. It's how do you turn motivation into momentum to help people see it through? Because very few people cross the finishing line.
I think the harder shift is actually from mindset to, I think probably just to be clear, I think the hardest gear to shift is the first. I think when your hands on that spanner and you're putting your life's energy into it and you're not getting anything back, I think that's the hardest gear to push through. And once it starts to move and you start to feel good, that is the hardest one to crack. After that, I think it shifts gears from the hard miles to the mindset. So sorry, but that's not the best word to use because the first gear is called mindset, but it's more about how you feel as an individual. And I'm a really good example of this because I'm probably the most human high performer that's out there because I wouldn't say I'm so inconsistent, but I let the pendulum swing. Like if you want me on, if when I say on, that means on, and you can't stop me. Like I will achieve whatever I've set out to achieve. I will break the world record. I will do whatever I've said I'm going to do. But equally, that's not how I live my life because I know that all those desires is ultimately a sacrifice. But when you're shifting that gear and going into motivation, into momentum, there's probably two main things that spring to mind for my experience, at least. One is when I really want to pull the pin, the timing's got to be right for me. And I've got to have been sick of either being overweight for too long or lazy for too long, or the negative outweighs that, you've got the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. When the pain of regret gets higher than the pain of discipline, that's the time to flick the switch. There's that element. But then also one of the sort of characteristics of high performers is how much they actually value their word. And it's like, if I say I'm going to do something, once I've said, I'm like, right, this is it, this is happening. To me, the outcome's inevitable then, because it's an absolute given. And I think I think we've talked previously about the honeymoon phase. You get that honeymoon phase, you're starting to feel good, it's all nice, but then actually you have to sort of crank it up a gear, or actually you have to put some effort in. It's bringing things into reality. It's holding yourself accountable. It's making it trackable. It's having it on a whiteboard. It's ticking it off every day. It's raising the stakes. It's making it public. And it's really being, I think there's a great book called The 4 Agreements. And one of the agreements is being impeccable with your word. When you're a high performer and you make that decision, I don't achieve all the things that I could achieve, but the things that I say I'm going to, I always get across the line, because when I make that decision that it's happening, that's it. It's happening. And that's a mindset thing. And I think that's something for people who've got a track record of not pulling the trigger. It's the fact they're probably not impeccable with their word, and they're letting themselves down, and actually they're happy to let themselves down, and worse, or rather they're letting themselves down in front of others, but worse, they're happy to let themselves down. And that's something that's completely, you can completely overcome that. That's something that it's completely reversible. You just want to work on it, I think.
Well, what do you think helps you reverse that? Because that is the difference between success and failure. Ultimately, it's, are you going to follow through on your word? Like, for example, for me, with the current photo shoot journey I'm on, there's no doubt that I'm gonna achieve this. I can say, like, am I gonna get walnut glutes on a vegan diet? Yeah, it's not even a question about it. It's gonna happen. But for and I use every tool available to make sure it's gonna happen. But even if there was no tool, it'd still happen. But one of the things we always battle with, and you battle it with it probably in a different context, more in business, but it's like, how do we get people to follow through on what they get so excited about at the beginning, and have that talk with them at all times to say they're going to make it happen? What have you seen?
I think it does. I think having done it lots of times over through my life, I think I could probably do it now without the tools. But I would say that I wouldn't have got to where I am today without the tools. So I think all of those things are very real. And on the Property Entrepreneur podcast, we've got one podcast, it's like episode 50, I think, the official Property Entrepreneur podcast, called Fire Up the Flywheel. That talks about the flywheel. But then there's another one, which I think it's called Raise the Stakes. And I recommend listening to that, because it talks about how we artificially raise the stakes. So a good example is when I'm running. I hate running. I absolutely hate running, but I've run marathons. I've raised money for charity, broke world records for charity using this methodology of raising the stakes. And when I'm physically running, so what the things we'll do is, we've got a charity called Get Up, Give Back. And we raise the stakes by saying, look, if we said to everyone, get healthy and fit, the first person you're going to let down is yourself, so that people let themselves down. Whereas when we say, this year we're backing these charities and we're going to raise this amount of money for these charities, and we all pledge our money, and we join the Facebook group, and we get on a tracker every week showing how many steps we've done and how much money we've raised, we're very visibly raising the stakes by whatever you want to call that, social accountability or whatever. It's raising those stakes. And when I'm physically running, I'll if I feel like I haven't got any energy, I want to slow down rather than speed up. If I see a car coming, I'll run out in front of the car, not like as dramatically as it sounds, but if the car's coming towards me at 25, 30 miles an hour and I run into the road, again, it's not as dramatic as it sounds, but I've then got to at least maintain pace, if not speed up, to get across the road. And it's these little hacks. You've got to remember, your brain is built to try and prevent you from doing anything that's remotely painful. What we've got to do is try and rewire. Well, you've got to physically rewire your brain. I think you and I have done that to our detriment to some degree, but it gives us the ability in the toolbox to turn it on. Those who haven't, it is a case of rewiring your brain. And also I think to give everyone credit or do everyone fair dues, it is easier for some people to be motivated than others. And I don't mean motivated in the sense of, I don't think anyone's really motivated, like waking up and buzzing. I think there's a lot of other stuff to motivation. I think it's like, if you come from a place of pain, normally your baseline is a little bit lower. So in business, you normally find high performers in business have normally had broken relationships, poor upbringings, challenged childhoods. And it's their one of their vents to go and, just to go and sort of overcome that because they want to climb that mountain. People who've perhaps, there's a good saying that says, show me a great man that was born of a great man. And basically what they're saying is there's very few billionaires who were born, self-made billionaires who were born from a millionaire or billionaire family, because if you've got it easy, why would you push it? So if you're naturally fit and healthy and athletic, there's an argument that going to the gym and stuff like that might be easier for you. So you might not push it as hard. It might be easier. And the idea of really pushing it is not necessary because you look in the mirror, you're happy, you're fit, you're healthy. Whereas if you're 10, 15, 20 stone overweight, you're fighting the worst of both worlds. Like, you really need to go and get it. It's going to save your life if you do it. But also you've probably got the bad habits that hold you back. And it's like, actually, when those guys pull the trigger, they can get more motivated than perhaps those who are starting from an easier baseline, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like running away from pain or being pulled towards pleasure. At the beginning of a journey, it's always typically running away from pain. You're being pushed away. It's like push theory and pull theory. You're pushed away, like you're trying to run away from the tiger. And then as you build more momentum, you want to shift towards pull. So you want to be pulling towards the limelight or the stars, rather than continuously running away from the tiger, because that tends to get you going. Afterwards, to really rewire your behavior, mindset, and identity, you need to have a strive to want to be a better person.
Where would you say you are in your cut right now?
I think, because for me, I'm not doing this cut because I've lost control, or I've kind of fallen off the mark. So for me, it's just about pushing to be a better person. If I was coming at this from a place of I've lost control of my day, I've gained 20 kilos accidentally, then there's a different element, because I'm trying to push away from a state of feeling horrible. Does that make sense?
If you think about, yeah, absolutely. And it's like there's so many layers to this conversation.
Well, and that's why, like, for those who are like, we call it the reward phase, which is like the ultimate place where you're in shape year round. So technically, I've been in shape year round. I'm just looking to go to the next level and test myself from a place of stability, as opposed to a place of instability, which is where the push theory comes from. And the reason why most people don't get to the position where they stay in shape year round is because they haven't made that transition yet. And so they find themselves dieting, gaining weight, and they do the diet when the pain of being the pain of the trousers feeling too tight starts to grow too much.
I mean, that's such a good example, because that's literally me. And it would be, I bet there's loads of people listening to this who have had success. Well, some people have had success in dieting, but then let the pendulum swing. Like I definitely do that. And I think I get lean. I stayed lean for my longest this year, up until I held at 61 till, I can't even remember, maybe like 3 months, like October, November. So that was probably the best part of a year. And then I just stopped getting on the scales every day. And the next time I looked up, obviously I've done a bit of a bulk as well, but next time I looked up, it was 71 kilos rather than 61. And I'm like, I'm not feeling this anymore. Like, and now I'm cutting down, come back down to 65. It's like, why is that? Why?
Well, I think,
why am I motivated not to hold at 61?
I think there's a few things. I mean, one of the things there that you did wrong was not looking at the scale. And actually, funnily enough, today I put an Instagram post up about this, of like, getting yourself on the scale every day isn't an obsessive compulsive disorder. I think it's the ultimate accountability. It's like the scale isn't the be all and end all, but it's a reflection of your behaviors. And it's a reflection of your processes and systems. If that scale weight is creeping up, and you don't mean it to creep up, you're probably doing something a bit weird. And if you find yourself thinking, actually, I don't fancy going on the scales now, that's the massive red flag, in that you're slipping on your behaviors. So, like, tying in a lot of self-accountability, which is why I think, for example, what I do is I'll weigh myself every day and I'll take pictures every week, all year round. Because for me, that's just an accountability mechanism more than anything, to hold myself to standards. But I'm also in a different position where I'm in the fitness industry. I've been doing this for over 10 years. So for me, it's now ingrained. But I had the periods earlier in this journey of when I did let the pendulum swing. And when I look back at what allowed me to finally flip the switch to keep it year round, I think it was just the realization that I know what good feels like. I don't want to not feel like that all the time. And when I place so much value on that feeling, that's when it was just like non-negotiable. I want to feel like this year round.
So like without shooting myself with the same gun, just to let you know, my mic just popped up. Was my audio okay in your headphones?
Yeah, it's fine.
Cool. Yeah, it just popped up, so it switched over. I've just switched it back. Without shooting myself with the same gun, when we're talking about that honeymoon phase and how do you maintain momentum once you've lost that, I think this would be a really good example to dive into for my own interest as much as everybody else's, is being down at 61 and seeing the lines and being lean and everything fits and it's all nice and good is nice when you get there. But equally, holding tight, you think about how long you hold tight in that place. I would say that there's a degree of motivation starting to reduce, because actually you've still got the same result every day, but the desire to achieve that is quite high on the way there. But then when you have it, perhaps the desire to stay there starts to get outweighed by the sacrifice that's required to stay there. And then you start to let the pendulum swing. How could somebody maintain that for a long period? I look at you, in the highest regard in that capacity, your sacrifice on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to maintain a lifestyle solution. Most people would say it's really high. You'll probably say it's just how I live my life now. What's the mindset shift that I need to change there? And people who are letting the pendulum swing need to change there, where they've got the results, but they take them for granted. It's like being ill. Like, you don't appreciate your health until you're ill. How do we flick that switch so we don't end up going?
I think the first thing is, if you feel like it's a sacrifice, then you're probably too lean. That's been the biggest thing I've learned, is that I've tried staying like walnut glute lean year round.
Yeah.
I did that for about 6 to 8 weeks, and for me, it was too much food focus. I was always thinking about food. I was overly restricting. I always had second thoughts about social events. And then I played around with where I am on that spectrum. And I found, for me, year round, I need to be around 78 to 80. And I can hold that without ever feeling like sacrifice. And I think the key thing really is, once you get those results, is not to hang on to that position. Because if you get attached to that position, you're going to sacrifice too much to stay there. And when it feels like a sacrifice, you're going to start feeling like, do I really want to be doing this? Do I really want to be thinking about what I'm going to be doing next week when I go out for my friend's birthday? It starts to play on your mind too much, because you need to sacrifice too much to stay there. So the goal really is like, okay, how do I controllably move that pendulum slightly and find where can I be in a position where I don't think about food, I don't need to plan around my social events too much, and it doesn't feel like sacrifice. For example, like this April Fool's thing I'm doing, I'm not planning on staying there once I get there. The plan is to controllably increase body weight. So I come to a place where I'm back where I'm not sacrificing. Because right now I am sacrificing, but there's going to have to be that's not sustainable. So the key to long-term results is getting to that result position. And then it's the consolidation. And then it's spending time finding where is good for you. And then it's not giving up in that pursuit, because it can be really like, I'm still feeling like I'm controlling myself, still feeling like it. You just got to find where that is before being like, oh, screw it, I'm just going to go for it. And then the next thing you know, you've missed that sweet spot. You've probably jumped from it. So let's say 61 is your like sacrifice point, 62, 63, and then you might say 63, 65 is really good. But if you say screw it at 63, you probably stop looking at the scales. The next thing you know, you're at 70. And you don't have that time on the journey to find where that moment is. And I think that's the hard bit. And I think when you do get to that point, then it's really easy to maintain.
Yeah, I think that makes complete logical sense. Because I mean, I was to hold at 61, I was doing 1,800 calories a day and 15,000 steps. So that's like, that's when I was chatting to people when we was in St. Anton the other week, chatting to Ian and that, and they were like, yeah, I'm on four meals of 600 a meal or whatever. And I was like, well, I'm on like 3 meals of 500 plus condiments and cock-ups. And it's like, you just compare it. And like my body weight is strange anyway. I went down to 56 on my shoot. I don't know. I just have whatever that body type is. I'm really sensitive to weight gain, but also the good side of that is I can put on muscle like reasonably quick. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's what I need to crack this time. And I think going back to the conversation around sort of high performance and things like that, I think having done this, I think I've done four cuts now, not aggressive shoot cuts, one shoot and then like 3 or 4 going down from say 70 down to like 61, 62. And each time, and I think this applies to business, it applies to training, it applies to weight cutting, is every time you get it wrong and you come back and have another go, it's not as bad. And it's like in business, one of the things I have to remember when I'm working with people is they have to hear it 8 times before they hear it for the first time. And it's like, I can say something like the sort of stuff that you hear ringing in your ears that I tell you about 10 times like a year or whatever. And I'll say the same thing. You've got to remember that as human beings, we have to hear it and make the same mistake again, and hear it and make the same mistake again. And I think it's just giving people that confidence to, you know, messing up it's not failure, it's feedback. And it's just getting better at it each time to try and find that, letting the pendulum swing a little bit less each time.
It's something I tell the team a lot because they're like, oh, didn't we already release an article on that? Did we do a podcast on that like, for the 5th time? I was like, yeah, but it won't resonate until it resonates. Like, until they listen to it with their ears open, you just got to keep saying it. And I think your journey is interesting because you said that the pendulum swings a little bit less each time. And I think it's a good example of someone who's trying to find that lifestyle solution and knowing that it doesn't come straight away. You can't do this in 6 weeks, 12 weeks, even a year. You've got to experiment and find what works for you in a long-term journey. And in the grand scheme of things, you're still probably like 3-4 years into like into having a little bit more structure around this. I took like nearly 10 years to crack it, but you know, most people now can do that in a lot shorter period of time, so long as they're willing to find where that pendulum is and where that sweet spot is. But it's a really hard thing to do because, like you said, you can even miss it, and then you just got to hope that the next time you do it, when it does stop swinging, it lands in the right place. Yeah,
and I think the chances of doing that intuitively are next to nil. But having things like I just use the RNT methodology. Everything I've done to do with like the phases, dieting, exercise. I thought dieting for 10, 20 years, 15 years was lifting heavy weights and running up and down hills, working up a sweat until I did RNT. And when you were like, look, just eat all this food and go walking, I was like, this guy has lost the plot. And then when it worked, I was like, this makes no sense at all, but I absolutely love it. And it's like, if you can get that methodology, same as business, you know, it's black and white. Well, there's 2 things, the blueprint and then execution. And it's like that, that's it. That's high performance is not rocket science. People think it's like a born given gift or a talent or a magic trick. It's not. It's just understanding the blueprint and finding the best blueprint. And then it's relentless execution. And then after that, it's, you know, all the things we just talked about then, not letting the pendulum swing, reversing properly out of cuts, maintaining momentum without going into the fast lane and burning yourself out. It's it's not easy. What people want to achieve is well within reach. Once you achieve that, there's a whole nother challenge above that, but the challenge is worth having because they all yield great results.
When it comes to raising the stakes, you mentioned you've got some tips on this. What were some key tangible stuff people can take away from this as it relates to raising the stakes for making execution easy?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically just think about what it means. Raising the stakes is, so I don't really like the limelight. I'm the guy that sits in the back, don't really like being on social media and all that. But every year I get wheeled out to do marketing campaigns for one of our companies, for Property Entrepreneur. And the way I raise the stakes is I think if this was up to me, you know, I'm comfortable, I've made my money, I don't have to do things. But to raise the stakes, I sign a contract with the Belfry for £300,000 to say, we want these rooms for next year. And I'm like, right, I've literally just signed a contract for 300 grand. I've got 2 choices now. I get on social media and I sell those 80 places and get it done, or it's going to cost me 300 grand. And obviously my momentum then, because the pain is a lot higher than the pain of not doing it is a lot higher than the pain of doing it. I just get on with it. So things like that, artificially telling your friends and family, holding yourself publicly accountable, taking people on a journey with you. So I'm doing a weight cut this time, and it's no coincidence I've got 160 property entrepreneurs doing it with me. So it's just like, I'm their leader. I mentor them on business. There's no way I'm going to publicly, in fact, I will. This is the thing. I will, where I screw up, where I hit a little precision dip, or I take my eye off the ball, I'll share with them. I go, guys, you know, I effed up yesterday. I'm human, but now I'm back on it and I'm even better than I was the day before. So raising the stakes by things like that. And then with health and fitness, it's there's like there's all the different tips and tricks. Raising the stakes, the ones I like is like I'll wear my clothes that don't fit. So like I walk around in clothes that don't fit. My love handles are over the top of my jeans. My t-shirt's like stuck to my gut. And I'm like, if you wear t-shirts that don't fit, you've got two options. You can walk around looking stupid, or you can trim some weight off. And I just do things like that, like raising the stakes like that, really. Or booking holidays, or if you're booking a photo shoot, having things in the diary. So I messaged my brother today because he's doing some he's doing a bit of a bulk at the minute, and with some like weight, he's doing some sort of like strength conditioning thing. And I said, oh, like, let me know if you fancy like a bit of a tidy up, because we'll do like a cut together. And he said, oh, we're both going away in May. So he's like, so we're sort of working out how much weight he's got, how much he wants to cut, how aggressive he wants to do it. So then we're both going on holiday together in May. You've raised the stakes then. There's a plane you've got to get on, and either you're going to be fitting in your clothes or you're going to be sitting there looking like a plonker. So it's like, anything you can do to artificially raise the stakes is, and it's all a game. Like it's all a game. Everything's a game. It's all a game.
Right. One thing I think you've hammered down there is community and getting people on the journey with you, and the power of like peer accountability, because relying just on yourself, you're the worst. You're going to be your worst critic and the worst boss, right? So how do you find people that are on this journey with you? If you're on this alone, what's the best way to cultivate this? Because some people feel scared about that. They feel scared about sharing their journey. They say, oh, I don't want anyone else to know. Or, all these things of like, I just want to do it in like hidden away, and I don't want anyone to know about this, and I don't feel comfortable sharing myself on social media.
Yeah, and I think there's always considerations around that. If you're grossly overweight, the idea of putting a weekly body shot in a public forum is probably not, that could hinder people rather than help them. Equally, if you're sitting there saying, oh, do you know what? No, I don't want to commit by posting it on Facebook. It's because you don't trust yourself. You don't have enough like confidence. The word confidence is like ancient French for trust. Is like, you don't have confidence in yourself. You don't trust yourself. You know that you're more likely to let yourself down here than succeed. That's why you don't want to put your head on the block. But actually, if you did put your head on the block, you would raise the stakes. And then either you really, really don't value your word, and you really, really you will then be two steps back, because you will feel worse because you've said you're going to do something and you don't, or you pull the trigger. And every year, so we've been running Get Up and Give Back since 2018. Every year people do it. And at the end of the challenge, they're like, I can't believe it's going to be finished. I've been doing 12,000 steps a day for 12 weeks. It's been like life-changing for me. 3 months later, you touch base with them. In fact, that's an exaggeration. 3 days later, you touch base with them and say, how did you get on with your steps last week? They've stopped doing it. No one's holding them accountable. There's no group anymore, and it's over. And then just like clockwork, we go around again this year, and we're going to the people, my friends, my family, and saying, we're doing Get Up and Give Back again. You don't have to donate any money. We've got all the money pledged, but do you want to come do the steps with us? And they're like, oh, do you know what? Like, it's pretty cold. It was a bit later last year. It's looking like it's going to be a cold winter. And they're going through that whole mindset thing again. I'm like, you don't remember last year you dropped 2.5 stone. You were in the shape of your life. You were up walking steps at 6 a.m, doing Facebook Live videos, loving it and sharing the journey with people. And then you drag them kicking and screaming into the competition. And 2 weeks in, that momentum's going again. And they're high-fiving each other. They're mates on Facebook. They've got WhatsApp groups going. And it's fun. It's like, yeah, it's fun. But also you want to surround yourself with good people. Like, if you're a property entrepreneur, one of the biggest things people rate is the community. RNT is exactly the same. If you want to, power of proximity, if you surround yourself with, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If the 5 people you choose to do a weight cut with have got a track record of not pulling the trigger, you're unlikely to succeed. Whereas if you raise the stakes, I've got a client who I've got a book bet with, very big client, very, very successful guy. And we've got a book challenge starting this month to write our book. I've been saying for 10 years, I'm going to write a book. And him and I have now put together a book writing challenge, and we're both going to write a book together. Not together, but holding each other accountable. And there's no way I would let him down by not doing it and make myself look like a fool. But for the last 10 years, I've let myself down. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's all a game.
That step challenge thing is funny because remember when I told you that I was in the group and I was tracking my steps at the time, the first 3 months, and I was pretty much bottom of the rung for the whole thing. Like I was clocking average 10 to 12,000 steps a day. Everyone was
like,
doing
who's
like
Akash? Who is this
15,
guy? Like,
20, 25. Yeah. And then I remember like the week after the Get Up and Give Out finish, I'm suddenly top 10. I thought, how did that happen?
That's it, right? It's yeah, success and failure are very predictable. I suppose that's the thing about extremes as well. That is the danger of doing a cut. And like, the whole thing about the RNT methodology is you've got to come out of it proper.
Yeah.
If you go to the extreme, it's like you normally get people who drink and people who drink. Get people who drink every night, glass of wine, maybe a couple of glasses at the weekend. And then you get those that don't drink at all, but then they go out on a Friday night and they'll have 10 pints and get absolutely blasted. It's like there's all of this, and there's a lot of that actually says that is actually a lot of it's upbringing, but also there's a lot of things about, there was a study about kids that eat all their food, and then some children eat all their food when they're like 1, 2, 3 years old on their high chair, eat all their food, never leave anything. And then there's some that always leave a little bit. And they did this study about how they grow up as people. And the people who ate everything, they're your extremists. They're like world records, going to smash it out of the park. Those who always left a bit are like, I'll have a glass of wine every now and again, every few things. It's, some of it, it's nature and nurture, right?
Which one were you?
Oh, I'm like, never, there wasn't a crumb left on the plate. Like, I'm on, like on or off. Like I've conquered both.
Yeah. So what's the game plan for 2022 with your fitness then? You're going to raise the stakes in and
yeah,
say
absolutely.
what you're going to be doing.
So all about finding the sweet spot. Definitely enjoyed being a lot bigger. When I went up to like 65, 66, I was like feeling big. My t-shirts are fitting me again, like feeling good in the mirror, getting good weights up, feeling strong, eating a modest diet, like eating like a 2,000 to 2 calories a day, and like really a good sort of sustainable lifestyle solution. But then obviously got off the scales, fell off plan, just took it silly, probably put on like 4 or 5 kilos more than I should have done.
By the way, it's a good lesson for muscle builders to not let they get it sloppy. Muscle builders can very easily go from, I'm muscle building to, I'm just perma bulking now.
Yeah.
So it's 100%. Just an easy one to forget.
When me and Adam let ourselves go, we'll meet up in the changing rooms or the gym or whatever, and like we'll sort of like half look at each other and say, if anyone asks, we're in the investment phase. And it's just like an ongoing joke that it's sort of a cover up. But equally, it works for a little bit. But then when you actually don't look good and your face looks fat, you have to really ask yourself, are you doing what you need to do? Or are you sort of pulling the wool over your own eyes? So mine be come back down 65 or 64, sorry. Doing that literally now, little modest cut, half kilo a week, come back down 64, probably do a bulk, just a more gradual muscle growth, more controlled. I enjoy eating more calories. I enjoy going to the gym, and I do really enjoy being bigger. And this is so raise the stakes. This is my hero for body transformation, Dana White. That's my sort of aspirational look, really. What do you think so far?
Yeah, couldn't tell the difference.
That's right. Very good, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, you raise the stakes, you give people tips to raise the stakes. So as always, the blueprints there. All you need to do is execute against it. Anything else to add?
Around like high performance, I think high performance is a gift and a curse. I think the strangest, and I don't get this either, but if you can find the middle lane, and this is like of life, middle lane of life, the slow lane's boring. You're slow, you're fat, you're eating Wotsits on your sofa, you're watching telly every night, you're drinking beer. The slow lane is boring. It's not good for you. It makes you feel like crap. It's not good. Equally, the fast lane, single digit body fat, walnut backsides, like it's that ultimate work into the absolute knife edge of performance is a very dangerous place to be. And at best, you catch points, you get caught speeding, and, you get a few warning signs that you should probably slow down. At worst, you lose your license and it knocks you out of the game for a while, whether that's weight gain or in business burnout, and it takes you out of the business, out the like space for 6 months to a year. I think the sweet spot is finding the middle lane. And I think it requires a degree of high performance just to get to the middle lane. And I think the sad thing is most people don't want to do it because they think it's a sacrifice. and I can say this, like Sav and my partner and I have both started doing this since January. January is a bit of a false start, always happens. 2 great weeks, week away, blah, blah, blah. But now we're locked in. And we're literally only a week into doing it 100% after a couple of weeks warm up. And, you know, we've got more energy. We're out walking. We're eating better food. Like life is just so much better in that space. And I think for those people who are listening and they're not happy and they're not feeling good and they know they're not looking after their body and they're not in good shape, this isn't an academic thing that, you know, you got to do this, otherwise you're going to get ill, or you got to do this, otherwise you won't live to 100. It's more like, and this is probably my closing sentiment, and I say this a lot on Property Entrepreneur, unless you want to ask any other questions, is my closing sentiment is you have to work hard to feel good. Like it takes effort to feel good. You have to plan your meals. You have to get out and do your steps. But once you're in it and it's your life, you sit here, and if I sit here and it's 10 a.m. and I'm feeling anxious and a bit restless and a bit like, oh, like something's wrong today, I look down and I've only got 1,000 steps on because I've not left the house. I'm like, of course, get my boots on, go stump out 3, 4, 5, 6,000 steps. And all of a sudden I'm in the promised land, feeling great, high-fiving strangers, like literally like loving my life. And you've got to put the effort in. And it's not running up and down hills, sweating and killing yourself. It's understanding nutrition. It's getting your steps in, getting some sleep. And it's just the basics to live a good life. And I think for all the people that are listening to this thinking that's not them right now, I would say read the R&T articles, sign up to the program, just read stuff around, listen to the podcast as you are now. And it will fundamentally change your life. But the return on investment is significant. You'll get loads from putting little in. And that middle lane really is the sweet spot.
Fantastic. Where can people find out more about some of your other work?
Without a doubt, I'd say whether you're into business or high performance, the podcast is like the place to be. We've really ramped that up this year. And it's now top 10 in the UK for business and entrepreneurship. And it's top 5% in the world for all podcasts. If you're into business, high performance, mindset, blueprints, hacks, 100% subscribe to that. And it's not necessarily your traditional podcast of interviews. They're episodes of blueprints. So just flick through and find something that's relevant to you about execution, growth, mindset, whatever, and give it a spin. I think you get loads of value from that. And then feel free to follow me on social media, Daniel Hill on Facebook, Property Entrepreneur on Instagram and YouTube. And yeah, just pull the trigger, warm up that flywheel, and the benefits you'll see will change your life, but it's always easier said than done.
Brilliant. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers, Akash.